The Atlanta airport buzzed with Friday chaos as Clara Evans, a sharp-eyed black woman in her 70s, stepped toward the first-class gate with her husband Malcolm, both in faded coats. A flight attendant, Vanessa Reed, smirked, blocking them, with a sharp, "Economy's that way, move it." Her sneer grew as she barked, "You don't belong here," oblivious to their quiet power. A gate agent muttered, "They're on the list." But Vanessa scoffed, unaware she'd just sparked her own downfall. What would this mistake cost her? Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from. If you stand for justice against all odds, hit like and subscribe for more gripping tales of truth unveiled. Clara Evans stood firm at the first-class gate of Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, her weathered hands clutching two pristine boarding passes. Her sharp brown eyes locked on Vanessa Reed, the flight attendant who just dismissed her and Malcolm with a venomous sneer. The air thrummed with the clamor of rolling suitcases and hurried footsteps, but Vanessa's voice cut through it all, loud and biting, as she snatched the tickets from Clara's grip, barely glancing at the bold print before tossing them back onto the counter with a flick of her wrist, her lips curling into a smug grin as she said, "These must be fake, nice try, but you're not fooling anyone." Clara's chest tightened, not from fear, but from the familiar sting of being judged by the color of her skin, her modest coat, her graying hair, all screaming outsider to this woman who didn't even bother to look twice. Malcolm, tall and silver-haired beside her, adjusted his glasses, his silence a coiled spring, his dark gaze piercing Vanessa with an intensity she couldn't yet comprehend. Around them, passengers slowed their pace, heads turning, a white businessman in a crisp suit snickering under his breath. They're delusional, thinking they can waltz in here. His words stoking a murmur of agreement from the growing crowd. Clara squared her shoulders, her voice steady as she slid the tickets back across the counter, saying, "Check them again. We're where we belong." But Vanessa's eyes narrowed, her pale cheeks flushing with irritation as she leaned forward, her tone dripping with condescension. "I don't need to check anything. I know a scam when I see one." The businessman chuckled louder, his briefcase swinging as he nodded to a woman in a fur coat who whispered, "Probably begging for handouts." And Clara felt the weight of their stares, a chorus of disdain she'd faced too many times in her 72 years. She took a slow breath, her mind racing with decades of resilience, and said, "Call your supervisor now." Her words crisp, cutting through the noise like a blade, but Vanessa's grin twisted into something uglier, her hand already reaching for her radio as she barked, "Security, we've got trespassers at Gate 12, get here quick." The crowd's murmurs swelled into a low roar, a mix of curiosity and hostility, as two burly guards in Navy uniforms pushed through, their boots thudding on the polished floor, their hands hovering near their holsters. Vanessa pointed at Clara and Malcolm, her voice rising. "These two think they can sneak into first class with fake tickets. Deal with them." And the guards exchanged a glance, one scratching his jaw, his brow furrowing as he muttered, "You sure about this?" Clara's pulse quickened, not from doubt but from the absurdity of it all, her dignity under siege in a place she'd built with her own hands. Malcolm stepped forward, his deep voice rumbling, "Look at the list before you make fools of yourselves." But Vanessa laughed, sharp and brittle, waving a hand at their worn shoes, their lack of flashy watches, saying, "Oh please, you're not fooling anyone with that act. Look at you, cheap clothes don't scream first class." The businessman clapped his hands, delighted, calling out, "Send them to the back where they belong." And a teenage girl nearby pulled out her phone, filming the scene with a smirk, the red light blinking as it captured Clara's humiliation for the world to see. The guards hesitated, one reaching for the ticket still lying on the counter, his fingers brushing the paper as he squinted at the names, but Vanessa snatched them away, her nails clicking against the surface, her voice a hiss, "Don't waste your time, they're nobodies, get them out of here." Clara's jaw clenched, her mind flashing to the countless times she'd been dismissed, underestimated, her success buried under the assumptions of people like this. And she said, "You're making a mistake you'll regret." Her tone calm, but laced with steel, a warning Vanessa didn't heed. The guards shifted, uneasy, one muttering into his radio, "We need a supervisor, something's off." But Vanessa rolled her eyes, folding her arms, her blonde ponytail swinging as she snapped, "What's off is these two thinking they can pull this off, move them now." The crowd pressed closer, a wall of faces, some amused, some annoyed. A woman in a red scarf muttering, "Always causing trouble." And Clara felt the air thicken, the weight of their collective judgment pressing down, a public shaming orchestrated by a woman too blind to see the truth. Malcolm's hand brushed hers, a silent anchor, his eyes never leaving Vanessa, who stood triumphant, oblivious to the storm she'd just unleashed. The businessman leaned against a pillar, his smirk widening as he said, "This is better than..." Cable watching them squirm, and the teenage girl zoomed in, her giggles echoing as the video streamed live, racking up views by the second. Clara's heart pounded, not from shame, but from the fire igniting within her, a resolve forged over decades of fighting battles just like this, battles she'd won time and again, though never without cost. The guard stepped closer, one reaching for Malcolm's arm, but he pulled back, his voice low. "Touch me and you'll answer for it." And the guard froze, uncertainty flickering in his eyes as the radio crackled, a voice cutting through. "Supervisor's on the way, hold off." Vanessa's smirk faltered for a split second, but she recovered, leaning into Clara's face, her breath hot as she whispered, "You're done here. Enjoy economy, it's where you fit." Clara met her gaze, unflinching, her mind already calculating the fallout, knowing this was just the beginning, that Vanessa's arrogance had lit a match in a room full of dynamite. The crowd's jeers grew louder, a chant of, "Get them out," rippling through, and Clara stood taller, her presence a quiet defiance against the chaos, a promise that this wouldn't end the way Vanessa expected. The supervisor's footsteps echoed in the distance, a faint hope, but Clara knew better than to trust it yet, her life a testament to the fact that justice was never handed over easily, especially not to people like her. Vanessa turned away, smug, directing the guards to block the gate, her victory seemingly assured. But Malcolm's silence deepened, his stillness a warning, a predator sizing up prey too foolish to run. The businessman clapped again, the sound sharp, and the woman in the fur coat nodded, saying, "About time someone put them in their place." But Clara's lips twitched, the faintest hint of a smile, because she'd heard that before. And every time, she'd proven them wrong. The guards hovered, caught between Vanessa's orders and their own doubts, one glancing at the ticket still clutched in her hand, the names Clara Evans and Malcolm Evans staring back, names that meant nothing to him yet, but soon would mean everything. The supervisor was close now, his shadow stretching across the floor, and Clara braced herself, knowing this moment would ripple far beyond this gate, a spark that would either burn her down or set the whole damn airline ablaze. The supervisor, Tim, burst through the crowd at gate 12, his bald head gleaming under the harsh airport lights, his clipboard trembling slightly as he shoved past the jeering businessman and the teenage girl still filming, her phone now a spotlight on Clara Evans and Malcolm Evans, who stood unwavering despite Vanessa Reed's venomous triumph. Tim's eyes darted to the tickets Vanessa clutched, his voice sharp as he snatched them from her manicured fingers, saying, "Give me those. Let's see what's really going on here." And the crowd hushed, a ripple of anticipation cutting through their hostility as he scanned the names, his face paling to a sickly white when he saw Clara Evans and Malcolm Evans in bold print, followed by the tiny VIP code that made his breath catch. Vanessa smirked, arms crossed, her blonde ponytail swaying as she muttered, "They're fakes, Tim. Don't waste your time." But his head snapped up, his gaze locking onto Clara's steady brown eyes, then Malcolm's unreadable stare, and, he stammered, You're on the list, first class. I'm so sorry, ma'am, sir. Please, board now." Clara's lips curved into a faint, victorious smile, her 72 years of grit shining through as she took Malcolm's arm, her worn coat brushing his as they stepped past Vanessa, whose jaw tightened, her smugness cracking like thin ice. The guards backed off, one rubbing his neck, muttering, "Told you something was off," while the businessman frowned, his snicker fading, and the woman in the fur coat whispered, "How'd they pull that off?" Clara's heart lifted, a rare moment of relief washing over her as they settled into the plush first-class seats, the leather cool against her skin, thinking maybe, just maybe, this fight was over. Malcolm adjusted his glasses, his silence a quiet storm, and she squeezed his hand, whispering, We showed them. But the victory tasted fleeting, a shadow lurking in the corner of her mind, because Vanessa wasn't done. As the plane taxied, Vanessa stormed down the aisle, her heels clicking like gunfire, her eyes burning with a fury Clara hadn't anticipated, and she leaned in close, her voice a low hiss only they could hear. "You don't deserve this. I'll fix it. Just watch." Clara's stomach twisted, the threat sinking in. But before she could respond, Vanessa spun away, her clipboard slamming against her thigh as she marched to the galley, leaving a chill in her wake. The flight took off, the hum of engines filling the cabin, and Clara tried to relax, sipping water from a crystal glass, her mind replaying Tim's apology, the crowd's stunned silence. But then it happened. A jolt of chaos that shattered her fragile win. Vanessa reappeared, a tray of coffee in her hands, her lips twitching with a smirk as she tripped, sending a scalding stream of black liquid splashing across Clara's lap, soaking her skirt, searing her thighs with a hiss of steam. Clara gasped, pain shooting through her, her hands flying to the mess as Vanessa cooed, "Oops, my bad, guess I'm clumsy today," her tone dripping with mockery, her eyes daring Clara to react. Passengers erupted in laughter, a balding man in a wee tie snorting, "She's making a scene already," and a young woman with hoop earrings giggled, "Should have stayed in economy, huh?" Clara's face burned, not just from the heat, but from the humiliation, the dismissal of her pain as some overblown tantrum, her status as Horizon Airways co-owner erased by Vanessa's cruel stunt. Malcolm shot to his feet, his deep voice rumbling, "Get a towel now." But Vanessa shrugged, sauntering off with a sway of her hips, leaving Clara to dab at the stain with napkins, her hands trembling not from weakness, but from rage. The coffee cooled, leaving a sticky mess, and Clara's mind raced, piecing it together, Vanessa's whisper echoing, "I'll fix it." A promise of more to come, a trap she hadn't seen until now. She glanced at Malcolm, his jaw tight, his fingers drumming the armrest, and she knew this wasn't the end, that this petty act was just the opening salvo in a war Vanessa was too arrogant to realize she'd already lost. The balding man leaned over, chuckling, "Guess first class isn't for everyone." And Clara met his gaze, her voice low, "You'd be surprised who it's for." But he just laughed harder, oblivious to the power simmering beneath her calm. Vanessa returned, tossing a damp rag onto Clara's lap with a flick of her wrist, saying, "There, happy now?" And Clara caught it, her eyes locking onto Vanessa's, a silent vow forming, because this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The plane leveled off, the seatbelt sign dimmed, and Clara's mind churned, the sting of the burn fading into a deeper fire, one fueled by decades of facing down people like Vanessa. People who saw her skin, her age, her quiet strength, and assumed she was nothing. She wiped her hands, folding the rag with precision, her thoughts sharpening, knowing this flight was about to become a battlefield, and she'd fought on worse terrain than this. Hey, viewers, what do you think? Comment number 1 if you're raging at Vanessa's petty power trip, or number 2 if you think Clara's about to turn the tables in a way no one sees coming. Drop a like if you're rooting for justice to hit hard, and hit that subscribe button if you're ready to see this showdown explode in ways that'll leave you speechless. Clara's got the upper hand now, or does she? How far will Vanessa go to fix this, and what's her next move when she realizes she's messed with the wrong couple? Stick around because the turbulence is just getting started. Clara Evans sat in her first-class seat, the damp rag still clutched in her hands, the sting of the coffee burn throbbing faintly on her thighs as the plane cruised at 35,000 feet, the hum of the engines a deceptive lull beneath, the storm brewing in her mind. She'd cleaned up as best she could, her skirt still clinging to her legs, the sticky residue a constant reminder of Vanessa Reed's spiteful accident. But she forced herself to breathe, to focus, thinking maybe this was the worst of it, that Vanessa's petty revenge had run its course. Malcolm sat beside her, his silver hair catching the overhead light, his fingers tracing the edge of his glasses as he stared out the window, his silence heavy with the weight of a man who'd seen too much to be rattled by a single insult. Clara leaned back, her sharp eyes scanning the cabin, the balding man 2 rows up still smirking, the young woman with hoop earrings scrolling her phone, their laughter from earlier echoing in her ears. But she told herself it was over, that she'd Endured and won, at least for now. Then Vanessa emerged from the galley, her heels clicking with purpose, a glint in her blue eyes that sent a shiver down Clara's spine, a predator's gleam she hadn't noticed before, and Clara's gut twisted, her instincts screaming that something worse was coming. Vanessa paused at their row, her clipboard tucked under her arm, her voice syrupy as she said, "Hope you're comfy now. Wouldn't want you to feel out of place." And Clara's jaw tightened, her reply sharp, "We're fine, just do your job." But Vanessa's smirk widened, a flicker of something sinister passing over her face as she turned away, disappearing behind the curtain. Minutes ticked by, the cabin settling into a restless quiet, passengers sipping drinks, flipping through magazines, and Clara tried to shake the unease, her mind drifting to the decades she'd spent building Horizon Airways from nothing, a legacy Vanessa couldn't touch, or so she thought. Then it hit, a jolt of chaos that shattered the calm, Vanessa's voice booming over the intercom, shrill and accusing. "Attention, everyone, we've got a thief on board. Someone's wallet's missing, and I saw him take it." Her finger, jabbing toward Malcolm as she stormed back into view, holding up a sleek leather wallet Clara had never seen before. The cabin erupted, heads whipping around, the balding man gasping, "What the hell?" And the young woman with hoop earrings, clutching her purse, her eyes wide as she hissed, "I knew they didn't belong here." Clara's heart slammed against her ribs, her mind racing as Vanessa pointed at Malcolm's carry-on, saying, "Check his bag. I saw him slip it in there." And the captain's voice crackled through, stern and cold. "This is your captain. We've got a criminal on board. Stay calm, we'll handle it." Passengers panicked, a woman in a silk blouse shrinking back, muttering, "He looks the type." And a teenage boy across the aisle filming it all, his phone shaking as he whispered, "This is wild." Clara shot to her feet, her voice cutting through the din. "That's a lie, he didn't take anything." But Vanessa's eyes gleamed with triumph, her hand already reaching for Malcolm's bag, unzipping it with a flourish to reveal the wallet, nestled among his books, a damning prop in her twisted play. Malcolm's face darkened, his deep voice rumbling, "You planted that. We all know it." But the passengers weren't listening, their fear and bias drowning out reason. The balding, band shouting, "Kick them off, I don't feel safe." Clara's pulse thundered, her mind spinning as she realized Vanessa had escalated from humiliation to sabotage, a calculated strike to destroy them mid-flight. She grabbed the bag, her hands steady despite the chaos, and yanked the wallet out, flipping it open to reveal a photo of a white man, nothing linking it to Malcolm, saying, "This isn't his. Look at it. She set us up." Her voice a whip cracking through the noise. The captain emerged from the cockpit, his gray hair slick with sweat, his eyes darting between Clara and Vanessa as he snatched the wallet, examining it, his frown deepening as he muttered, "This doesn't add up." Vanessa's smirk faltered, her fingers twitching, but she doubled down, her voice rising. "He must have stolen it earlier, I saw him, he's sneaky." And Clara's rage flared, her 72 years of fighting racism boiling over as she said, "You're the only sneak here and I'll prove it." She pulled out her phone, scrolling to a photo she'd snapped earlier. Vanessa's hand brushing Malcolm's bag during the coffee spill. A blurry but damning shot of her planting the evidence, and she shoved it in the captain's face, saying, "There's your thief." The captain's jaw tightened, his gaze shifting to Vanessa, who stammered, That's not what it looks like." But he cut her off, his voice low. "Enough. This stops now." And he turned to the passengers, announcing, "False alarm, folks, sit down, we're sorting this out." Clara exhaled, her legs trembling as she sank back into her seat. The wallet confiscated, the cabin simmering with reluctant calm, thinking they'd dodged the bullet, that Vanessa's scheme had crumbled under her quick thinking. Malcolm squeezed, her hand, his voice a whisper, "Good move." And she nodded, her chest swelling with a fleeting triumph, believing they'd outsmarted her, that the worst was behind them. But Vanessa didn't retreat, her heels clicking as she stormed to the galley, her face a mask of fury, and Clara's relief evaporated as she overheard her muttering to a coworker, "They won't get away with this." Her words a venomous promise. The captain returned, his tone clipped as he leaned in, saying, "I'm sorry, ma'am, sir, she's out of line, I'll handle her." And Clara nodded, her voice firm, "See that you do." But her eyes followed Vanessa, who was now on her radio, her lips moving fast, her expression dark. Minutes later, the captain's voice crackled again, this time with a chill that froze Clara's blood. "Ground control's been alerted. We've got an issue with unruly passengers. Police will meet us on landing." And Vanessa's smirk returned, visible through the curtain, a silent vow that she'd twisted the narrative again. Clara's heart sank, her mind racing as she realized the accusation wasn't dead. It had morphed into something deadlier. Vanessa's racism weaponizing the system against them, turning their victory into a trap. Malcolm's hand tightened on hers, his voice low. "They're not done with us." And she nodded, her sharp mind already plotting, knowing this flight was no longer just a journey, but a fight for their freedom, maybe their lives. The passengers settled, some glaring, others whispering, the balding man muttering, "Still don't trust them." And Clara felt the weight of their bias, the assumption that she and Malcolm were the threat, not the woman who'd framed them. Vanessa disappeared into the galley, her radio crackling faintly, and Clara's stomach churned, the captain's apology ringing hollow as she braced for what awaited them on the ground. A new battle she hadn't anticipated, one where her ownership of Horizon Airways might not be enough to save them from the jaws of a system primed to swallow them whole. The plane touched down at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport with a jolt, the wheels screeching against the tarmac as Clara Evans gripped the armrest, her sharp eyes darting to the window where flashing red and blue lights pierced. The dusk, a swarm of police cars already encircling the gate like vultures on a fresh kill. Malcolm adjusted his glasses beside her, his silver hair glinting under the cabin lights, his calm exterior masking the storm Clara knew simmered within, both of them bracing for the fallout of Vanessa Reed's latest strike, her radio call branding them unruly, now a noose tightening around their necks. The captain had apologized, his words hollow against the reality unfolding outside, and Clara's thighs still ached from the coffee burn, her skirt stiff with dried stains, a badge of the battle she'd fought mid-flight. But she'd thought. Exposing Vanessa's wallet stunt had bought them some breathing room, a fleeting wind snatched from chaos. The cabin buzzed with restless passengers, the balding man craning his neck to see the cops, muttering, "Told you they were trouble," and the young woman with hoop earrings clutching her phone, her fingers poised to record the next act of this twisted drama. Vanessa emerged from the galley, her heels clicking with a smug rhythm, her blue eyes glinting as she leaned against the bulkhead, her smirk a silent taunt, daring Clara to crumble under the weight of what she'd unleashed. The jet bridge hissed into place, the door swinging open, and 4 officers stormed aboard, their boots thudding, guns glinting at their hips. The lead cop, a burly man with a buzz cut, barking, "Clara Evans, Malcolm Evans, step forward. You're under arrest for disorderly conduct and theft." Clara's heart slammed against her ribs, her mind reeling as she stood, her 72 years of resilience surging forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This is a setup. Check your facts before you touch us." But the cop's hand hovered over his cuffs, his sneer mirroring Vanessa's as he said, "We've got a witness, lady. Save it for the station." Malcolm rose beside her, his deep voice steady. "You're making a mistake." And the passengers gasped, the teenage boy filming with a shaky grin, the balding man nodding. About time, as if their fate was sealed. Clara's pulse thundered, her sharp mind racing back to the photo on her phone, the blurry proof of Vanessa planting the wallet, and she yanked it from her purse, shoving it toward the cop, saying, "Look at this. She framed us. That's your witness." The officer's eyes narrowed, his meaty fingers swiping the screen, his frown deepening as he saw Vanessa's hand slipping into Malcolm's bag, the timestamp matching the coffee spill, a crack in her story widening before his eyes. Vanessa's smirk faltered, her voice rising. "That's edited, they're liars." But Clara stepped closer, her gaze piercing. "Check the bag's zipper. Her fingerprints are on it, not ours." And the cop hesitated, his radio crackling, as he muttered, "Hold up, we've got evidence here." The second officer, a wiry man with a mustache, grabbed Malcolm's carry-on, inspecting the zipper, his gloved fingers tracing the metal, and he nodded. "She's right. This doesn't add up, no prints from him." The lead cop's jaw tightened, his gaze shifting to Vanessa, who stammered, I didn't, they're twisting it." But he cut her off, his voice gruff. "Step aside, ma'am, we're clearing this now." And he waved his team back, their boots retreating down the aisle, the cuffs staying on their belts. Clara exhaled, her legs trembling as she sank into her seat, the flashing lights outside dimming as the cops dispersed, their cars peeling away, a humiliating retreat that left the cabin in stunned silence. Malcolm squeezed her hand, his voice, a low rumble. "We got through that one." And she nodded, her chest swelling with a hard-earned triumph, thinking they'd dodged the bullet, that Vanessa's lies had finally collapsed under their weight. The passengers shifted, some glaring, others whispering, the balding man muttering, "Still don't belong here." But Clara ignored him, her sharp eyes catching Vanessa's retreat to the galley, her heels dragging, her defeat palpable, or so it seemed. The captain emerged, his gray hair disheveled, his tone clipped. "I'm filing a report. She's off this flight." And Clara nodded, her voice firm. "Good. She's a liability." Believing justice had swung their way, that this nightmare was grounding itself at last. But then a shadow loomed at the gate, a tall figure in a tailored suit pushing through the jet bridge, his presence sucking the air from the cabin, and Clara's relief curdled as she recognized Richard Holt, Horizon Airways operations exec, his steely gray eyes locking onto her with a venom she'd seen before. A man who'd climbed the ranks on a ladder of prejudice, his disdain for her ownership a poorly kept secret. Richard strode aboard, his polished shoes gleaming, his voice smooth but lethal as he said, "I heard everything. Vanessa's just the start. I'll teach you your place." His words a dagger aimed at Clara's core, a promise of war from a man with power she couldn't ignore. Vanessa perked up, her smirk returning as she sidled up to Richard, whispering, "They humiliated me, sir." And he nodded, his gaze never leaving Clara, his lips curling into a thin smile. "Don't worry, they'll pay." The captain frowned, stepping forward. "Sir, this is handled." But Richard waved him off, his authority absolute, saying, "Not yet. It's not." And Clara's stomach sank, her mind racing as she realized this wasn't over, that Vanessa's petty revenge had summoned a far deadlier foe. Malcolm's hand tightened on hers, his voice a whisper, "He's trouble." And she nodded, her sharp mind already plotting, knowing Richard's vendetta was systemic, a beast with teeth sharper than Vanessa's, one that wouldn't back down, with a photo or a fingerprint. The passengers watched, the balding man smirking. "Now it's getting good." And the young woman with hoop earrings filming again, her lens catching Richard's cold stare, a new chapter unfolding before Clara could catch her breath. Richard turned to the crew, his voice booming. "I'm suspending anyone who sided with them. This isn't their plane. It's ours." And two attendants paled, their badges glinting as they stepped back, loyalists to Clara, now targets in his crosshairs. Clara's triumph dissolved, her victory hollowed out by this new threat. Her ownership of Horizon Airways a shield that suddenly felt paper thin against a man who'd spent years waiting for a chance to strike. She met his gaze, her 72 years of grit flaring, saying, "You don't scare me." But he chuckled, low and dark. "I don't need to. I just need to win." And he strode off, leaving a chill in his wake, a signal that this fight had just begun, that the police were child's play compared to the war he'd wage. Clara's heart pounded, her mind churning, knowing every step forward would now be a battle, that Richard's power could twist her world inside out. And she braced herself, her resolve hardening, because she'd faced worse, survived worse. But this time, the stakes felt higher, the enemy closer, and the ground beneath her shakier than ever. Clara Evans stepped off the plane into the humid Atlanta night, her sharp eyes scanning the terminal as Malcolm walked beside her, his silver hair catching the flicker of neon signs, both of them still reeling from Richard Holt's chilling vow to teach them their place, a threat that lingered like smoke after a fire. The police had backed off, Vanessa Reed had slunk away under Richard's shadow, and Clara had dared to hope the worst was behind them, that their next flight, a short hop to Charlotte booked for the following morning, would be a chance to regroup, to reclaim the dignity Vanessa's coffee spill and false accusations had tried to strip away. She'd scrubbed the stains from her skirt in the airport bathroom, her 72-year-old hands steady despite the ache in her thighs, and she'd smiled faintly at Malcolm, saying, "We'll fly again tomorrow. Show them we don't break." His nod a quiet anchor as they checked into a nearby hotel. the weight of their ownership of Horizon Airways a shield she thought could hold. Morning came fast, the sun barely cresting the skyline as they arrived at Gate 7, their first-class tickets clutched tight, the terminal buzzing with travelers oblivious to the war simmering beneath Clara's calm exterior. She settled into her seat, the plush leather a small comfort. Malcolm beside her flipping through a newspaper, his glasses glinting as the plane taxied, and she let herself relax, her mind drifting to the board meeting she'd call soon, ready to expose Richard's vendetta and reclaim control. The takeoff was smooth, the sky stretching endless outside her window, and she closed her eyes, thinking this was it. A fresh start, until the intercom crackled, Vanessa's voice slicing through the calm, smug and sharp. "Attention passengers. Due to a booking error, some folks up here don't belong. Economy's got your new seats, Clara and Malcolm Evans." Clara's eyes snapped open, her heart lurching as passengers turned. The balding man from the last flight, somehow on board again, snickering, back where they fit, and a woman in a green sweater muttering, "Should have known they'd pull this again." Malcolm's jaw tightened, his newspaper crumpling in his fists, and Clara shot to her feet, her voice ringing out, "Check your system, we paid for these seats." But Vanessa sauntered down the aisle, her heels clicking, her smirk wide as she said, "System says economy, sweetie. Move it." Clara's mind raced, Richard's words echoing, "I'll teach you your place." And she realized this wasn't a glitch. It was sabotage. His hands deep in the airline's tech, downgrading them mid-flight to humiliate her in front of everyone. The captain's voice chimed in, hesitant. Folks, we're sorting this, sit tight." But Vanessa leaned in, her breath hot on Clara's ear, whispering, "Guess you're not so special now." And Clara's rage flared, her sharp tongue lashing back, "You're a puppet, he's pulling your strings." But Vanessa just laughed, turning to the passengers. "They're holding us up, folks. Let's cheer them to the back." The cabin erupted, claps and hoots raining down, a teenage girl with braids shouting, "Go already!" And Clara felt the sting of their scorn, her status erased by Richard's unseen hand. She grabbed her phone, dialing a board ally, Denise, her voice low and urgent. "Check the booking logs now, Richard's behind this." And Denise's reply came fast. "Holy hell, he's hacked it, I'm overriding it, hang on." Minutes later, the captain's voice returned, flustered. Correction. Evans' party stays in first class, system's fixed." And Clara sank back, her chest heaving, the passengers groaning, the balding man muttering, "Figures they'd weasel out." But her victory felt thin, Vanessa's smirk lingering as she strutted off, her radio crackling with a new plan. Clara thought it was over, her seat secure, until she checked her bag at landing, her luggage gone, a clerk shrugging. "Sent to Denver, ma'am, system glitch," and Malcolm's suitcase missing too, stranding them with nothing. Richard's sabotage stretching beyond the flight. She clenched her fists, her mind churning, knowing this was just the start. But then it got worse, her phone buzzing with a news alert, a headline screaming, "Elderly couple scams Horizon Airways for free upgrades." A smear piece dripping, with lies Richard's voice quoted. "They bullied staff, abused their tickets. We're investigating." Clara's stomach dropped, her reputation now a punching bag, the public's outrage already swelling online, comments flooding in. "Kick them out. Frauds don't deserve first class." And she realized Richard had turned her win into a weapon, painting her as the villain to a world eager to believe it. Malcolm's hand found hers, his voice steady. "We'll fight this." And she nodded, calling Denise again, her voice fierce. "Leak the truth. I own this airline. Get it out now." And Denise agreed. "On it, Clara. We'll bury him." But the damage was spreading. Passengers at the gate glaring, a man in a baseball cap spitting, "Scammers," as they passed. Clara's triumph from the police retreat felt like a lifetime ago. Richard's systemic attack hitting harder than Vanessa's petty games, his power twisting her legacy into a lie. And she braced herself, her 72 years of grit flaring, knowing this war was far from won. Hey viewers, what's your take? Comment number 1 if you're furious at Richard's dirty tricks, or number 2 if you think Clara's about to flip this mess into a knockout punch. Smash that like button if you're cheering for her to take back what's hers, and hit subscribe if you're hooked on seeing justice claw its way to the top. Richard's got the upper hand with lies and sabotage, But can he really outsmart a woman who built this airline from the ground up? What's his next play when the truth starts spilling out? Stay tuned, because this fight's about to hit a whole new altitude. Clara Evans stood in the Charlotte terminal, her sharp eyes narrowing as the news alert buzzed on her phone. The smear campaign Richard Holt had unleashed. Elderly couple scams Horizon Airways for free upgrades. Now a wildfire spreading. Across screens, twisting her legacy into a lie as travelers shot her hostile glares. A man in a plaid shirt muttering, "There's the fraud," under his breath. Malcolm adjusted his glasses beside her, his silver hair a stark contrast to the darkening mood, his hand steady on her elbow as they moved toward their rental car, both clinging to the hope that Denise's counterleak, proving they owned Horizon Airways, would douse the flames before their next flight back to Atlanta in 2 days. Clara's skirt still bore faint coffee stains, her thighs aching from Vanessa's earlier attack, but she'd squared her shoulders, whispering to Malcolm, "We've faced worse. We'll beat this too." Her 72 years of grit a shield against the growing storm, though the weight of public scorn pressed harder than ever. They'd spent the night in a quiet hotel, her phone silenced to block the flood of hate, and she'd woken determined, her mind set on a press conference to reclaim the narrative, thinking truth would be her sword. The next morning, they arrived. At the airport, the air thick with Friday chaos, travelers lugging bags, announcements blaring, and Clara felt a flicker of relief as Denise texted, "Leaks out. Press is picking it up. You're golden." A lifeline she gripped tight, believing. The tide was turning. She stepped toward the check-in counter, her worn coat brushing Malcolm's arm, her voice firm as she handed over their tickets. "First class, Evans." And the agent nodded. No trace of Vanessa's venom, a small wind that steadied her pulse. But then it hit. A roar from the concourse, a mob surging toward them, dozens strong, their faces twisted with rage, fists clutching phones and signs scrawled with "Thieves out," and "No scammers in first class." Richard's lies fueling. A vigilante fire Clara hadn't seen coming. A burly man in a trucker hat shoved forward, bellowing, "You don't belong here, go back where you came from." His words dripping with venom, and a woman in a denim jacket hurled a soda bottle, the plastic cracking against Clara's shoulder. Sticky liquid soaking her sleeve as she stumbled back, Malcolm's arm catching her before she fell. Her heart pounded, her sharp mind reeling as the crowd closed in, a teenage boy with a buzz cut spitting, "Liars, you stole those seats!" And a middle-aged woman with a cross necklace screaming, "You're a disgrace!" Their fury a wall of hate built on Richard's fabricated narrative, unshaken by the truth trickling out. Clara's arm throbbed, blood seeping from a cut where a second bottle, glass this time, shattered against her elbow, and she winced, her voice rising. "We own this airline. Stop this." But her words drowned in the chaos, the mob's roar, swallowing her proof, their phones flashing as they filmed, turning her pain into a spectacle. Malcolm shielded her, his deep voice booming, "Back off now." His tall frame a barrier as he pushed through, but a wiry man in a red cap swung a fist, grazing Malcolm's jaw, and Clara's rage flared, her 72 years of battles surging, as she grabbed a fallen sign, wielding it like a shield, shouting, "You're wrong, all of you." Security stood by, their navy uniforms stark against the crowd, one chewing gum, another checking his watch, their indifference a gut punch, and Clara realized Richard's influence stretched here too, his bribes turning protectors into bystanders. The mob pressed closer, a woman with dyed blonde hair hurling a coffee cup, the lid bursting to splatter Clara's chest, the burn a cruel echo of Vanessa's stunt, and she staggered, her vision blurring as Malcolm pulled her toward a service door, his voice low, "We've got to get out." His glasses fogged with sweat. They slipped through, the metal door slamming shut, the mob's chants muffled but relentless. "Thieves! Thieves!" And Clara leaned against the wall, her arm bleeding, her coat drenched, thinking they'd escaped, that this was the worst of it, until sirens wailed outside, a new threat she couldn't yet see. Malcolm peeked through a window, his face hardening. "They've torched the car," and Clara's stomach dropped, her rental now a blazing husk in the lot, flames licking, the sky as the mob cheered, Richard's smear campaign igniting literal destruction. She wiped blood from her elbow, her sharp mind racing, knowing this wasn't random, that Richard had fanned these flames, his voice on a TV overhead proving it, a live interview cutting through the chaos. They're thieves who bullied staff. This is what happens when you let people like them run things, his steely eyes glinting, his lies doubling down despite Denise's leak. Clara's breath hitched, her victory from the flight unraveling, the mob's fury a beast Richard controlled. And she clutched Malcolm's arm, whispering, "He's not stopping." Her resolve hardening as she realized the press conference wouldn't be enough, that this war had turned physical, public, brutal. They ducked into a maintenance hall, the stench of oil thick, her arm pulsing with pain, and Malcolm ripped his sleeve, binding her cut, his voice steady. "We'll hit back harder." But footsteps echoed behind them, a guard finally moving, his radio crackling. "Holt says let the crowd tire out." And Clara's jaw clenched, Richard's reach suffocating, his refusal to lose a blade at her throat. She straightened, her 72 years of defiance flaring, knowing this mob was just the start, that Richard's next strike would be worse, deadlier, and she braced herself, her body battered but her spirit unbowed, because she'd survived. Hate before turned it to fuel, and this time she'd burn his empire down no matter the cost. Clara Evans crouched in the dim maintenance hall of Charlotte's airport, her sharp eyes scanning the flickering exit sign as Malcolm tied his torn sleeve around her bleeding elbow, the sting of glass cuts pulsing beneath the makeshift bandage, her coat still dripping with soda and coffee from the mob's assault, the acrid smell of burning rubber wafting through a cracked window where their torched rental car smoldered in the lot. Her 72-year-old frame ached, her chest tight from the chaos they'd escaped. Richard Holt's TV lies, they're thieves who bullied staff, still ringing in her ears. But she'd clung to a shred of hope, whispering to Malcolm, "The press conference will fix this. We'll show them who we are." Her voice fierce despite the tremor in her hands, his silver hair glinting as he nodded, his deep voice steady. "We've got the truth, that's enough." They'd slipped out a back exit, dodging the mob's fading chance, hailing a cab to a downtown hotel, her mind set on the next morning's stand, a public unveiling of their ownership of Horizon Airways to crush Richard's smear campaign, believing the tide could still turn. Dawn broke gray and heavy, Clara in a fresh blouse, her arm bandaged properly now, stepping into a rented conference room, cameras flashing as reporters jostled, Malcolm at her side, his glasses polished, his presence a rock as she faced the mic, her voice cutting through the hum. "I'm Clara Evans, co-owner of Horizon Airways. Richard Holt's lies end today. We built this company, not him." She held up deeds, stock certificates, her sharp eyes daring the crowd to doubt. And the room erupted, gasps rippling, a young journalist in a blazer stammering, "You're the owners?" While an older man with a notepad nodded, "Checks out. I've seen the filings." And Clara's chest swelled, the mob's fury fading in her mind, victory tasting sharp and sweet as Denise's leak hit the wires, headlines shifting. "Airline owners targeted by exec smear." She met Malcolm's gaze, his faint smile a rare crack in his stoicism. And she thought they'd won. That Richard's house of cards was collapsing, the public's rage turning on him at last. But then the floor dropped, sirens wailing outside, a dozen cops bursting through the doors, their boots pounding, badges glinting as the lead officer, a gaunt man with a scar on his cheek, barked, "Clara Evans, Malcolm Evans, you're under arrest for embezzlement. Step away from the mic." Clara's heart slammed, her mind reeling as cuffs snapped onto Malcolm's wrists, his glasses slipping as he grunted, her voice rising. "This is insane. What proof do you have?" And the cop shoved a stack of papers at her, forged ledgers, showing millions drained from Horizon's accounts, dates and signatures in her name. A lie so blatant it stole her breath. Cameras flashed, reporters shouting, "Is it true? Did you steal from your own airline?" And Clara's knees buckled, Malcolm's deep voice cutting through, "It's fake, check the records." But the cop sneered, "Tell it to the judge," dragging him toward the door as she stumbled after, her sharp mind racing, Richard's hand behind this, his refusal to lose twisting her triumph into a nightmare. The mob's fury had been child's play. This was systemic, legal, a noose tightened by a man who'd rather destroy her than admit defeat, and she clutched the podium shouting, "Call my lawyer now!" Their attorney, a wiry woman named Lena, arrived as they were shoved into a squad car, her briefcase slamming open to reveal the real financials, pristine and untouched, and she stormed the precinct, her voice a whip. "These are forgeries. Release them." Her evidence dismantling the lies in hours, Malcolm's cuffs clicking off as Clara rubbed her wrists, her blouse wrinkled, her victory from the press conference a ghost. Lena grinned. "They've got nothing, you're free." And Clara exhaled, thinking they'd dodged the bullet, that Richard's legal ambush had failed, until a clerk at the hotel desk later that night handed her a letter. Her bank accounts, frozen, assets seized, a judge's order stamped with yesterday's date. Richard's name in the fine print, his payoffs reaching the bench itself. Clara's stomach sank, her sharp eyes tracing the words, "Investigation pending," her empire gutted overnight, penniless despite her ownership, and Malcolm's hand clenched, his voice low. "He's not done." Her 72 years of grit flaring as she realized this wasn't just revenge, it was annihilation. Richard's power stripping her bare when she thought she'd won. They sat in the hotel lobby, her phone dead from drained batteries, the TV flickering with Richard's face, a new interview. "We're cleaning house, those two won't see a dime," his steely eyes glinting, his lies doubling down, and Clara's breath hitched, her victory a mirage. The press conference's truth drowned by this fresh assault. Lena called, her voice tense. "He's got a judge in his pocket. I'll fight it. But your funds are locked." And Clara nodded, her mind churning, knowing every step forward was a trap, that Richard's refusal to lose had turned her ownership into a curse, her legacy a target for his wrath. She met Malcolm's gaze, his jaw tight, and she whispered, "We'll rebuild." But the words felt fragile. The hotel's dim lights casting shadows on her bandaged arm, her body battered, her spirit tested, and she braced herself, knowing this legal blow was just the edge of Richard's blade, that the next strike would cut deeper, faster, deadlier, and she'd have to outsmart a system rigged to crush her, no matter how high she'd climbed. Clara Evans sat on the edge of the hotel bed in Charlotte, her sharp eyes tracing the judge's order, freezing her accounts, the paper trembling in her bandaged hands as Malcolm paced the room, his silver hair disheveled, his glasses fogged from the steam of a coffee mug he hadn't touched, both of them reeling from Richard Holt's legal ambush that had stripped them penniless despite their victory at the press conference. Her 72-year-old frame sagged, her elbow throbbing beneath the gauze, the mob's cuts and Richard's lies a twin assault. But she'd rallied, whispering to Malcolm, "We've got loyal people, we'll hit back." Her voice a thread of steel, his nod a silent vow as they'd called Lena, their attorney, to dig deeper, to find a crack in Richard's armor. The next morning, Clara met with a handful of Horizon Airways staff in a cramped diner, her blouse crisp despite the chaos, her sharp mind piecing together a plan, saying, "Richard's running this through the company. We need proof, emails, anything." And a young IT tech, Jamal, nodded, his fingers flying over a laptop. "I've got access, I'll pull his records." Hours later, Jamal texted, "Found it. Racist emails, he's toast." And Clara's chest swelled, a spark of hope igniting as she leaked the files to a local reporter, her voice firm. "Print this now, show the world who he is." And by noon, headlines screamed, Horizon execs' bigoted emails exposed. Lines like, "They don't belong at the top, keep them grounded." In Richard's own words, a smoking gun that turned the tide. The hotel TV blared, a news anchor stammering, "Richard Holt suspended pending investigation." And Clara smiled, her 72 years of grit paying off, thinking this was it, the knockout blow. Malcolm's deep voice rumbling, "He's done," as they booked a private jet back to Atlanta, a defiant return to reclaim their empire. They boarded at dusk, the small plane's engines humming, Clara settling into a leather seat, her bandaged arm resting. Malcolm beside her flipping through the leaked emails, his glasses glinting, and she let herself believe they'd won. That Richard's suspension was the endgame, the mob's fury and legal traps undone by truth. The jet climbed, the sky darkening, and Clara closed her eyes, her mind easing, until a shudder rocked the cabin, the engine sputtering, a high-pitched whine cutting through the calm as the plane lurched, Malcolm's coffee spilling across the table, his voice sharp. "What's happening?" The pilot, a wiry man named Terry they'd trusted for years, shouted from the cockpit, "Engines failing, brace yourselves." And Clara's heart slammed, her sharp eyes darting to the window as the ground loomed closer, trees blurring into a deadly promise. She gripped Malcolm's hand, her voice steady. "We're not dying today." But the jet plunged, her stomach flipping as alarms blared, the cabin shaking, every second a scream in her mind. 72 years flashing before her. Not like this, not now. Then a jolt, the backup system kicking in, the engines roaring back to life, Terry's voice cracking. "Got it, we're leveling off." And the plane steadied, landing hard on a rural strip 30 miles from Atlanta, gravel crunching under the wheels as Clara exhaled, her body trembling, Malcolm's arm around her, his breath ragged. Too close. They stumbled out, the night air cold, Terry wiping sweat from his brow, muttering, "Sabotage, someone cut the fuel lines," and Clara's sharp mind snapped to focus, her voice icy. Who had access? Terry's eyes darted, his hands shaking. I checked it myself. No one else." And a chill ran through her, betrayal cutting deeper than the mob's glass, Richard's reach slithering into her inner circle. She grabbed Terry's collar, her 72 years of fury boiling. "You did this, didn't you?" And he crumpled, his voice a whisper. "Holt blackmailed me. My kid's sick. He'd pay the bills," tears streaking his face as he bolted into the woods, vanishing into the dark. Clara's knees buckled, Malcolm catching her, her mind reeling, Terry's loyalty a lie, Richard's refusal to lose turning her own people against her, this near-death plunge a new peak of his vengeance. They hitched a ride back to Atlanta, her blouse torn, her arm throbbing, the jet's wreckage a scar on her victory. And she realized Richard's suspension hadn't stopped him. It had unleashed him, his power twisting her empire from within, survival no longer a given. She met Malcolm's gaze, his jaw tight, and whispered, "We're not safe anywhere." Her sharp mind racing, knowing this betrayal was just the edge of Richard's next strike, that he'd played dirtier, deadlier, and she'd have to outsmart, a snake in her own nest, her legacy hanging by a thread. Hey viewers, what's your call? Comment number 1 if you're stunned Terry flipped on Clara, or number 2 if you think she's got the grit to turn this betrayal into her biggest win yet. Drop a like if you're reeling from Richard's ruthless moves, and hit subscribe if you're all in for Clara's fight to take back her airline, no matter who's stabbing her in the back. A crash couldn't stop her, but with Richard pulling strings from the shadows, what's he cooking up next to? Bury her for good? Buckle up because this roller coaster's nowhere near the end. Clara Evans stood in the dim Atlanta hotel room, her sharp eyes tracing the grain of the wooden table as Malcolm sat beside her, his silver hair catching the lamplight, his glasses fogged from the steam of a fresh tea he'd brewed, both of them. Still shaken from the jet's sabotage, Terry's betrayal a wound deeper than the cuts on her arm, now scabbed beneath a new bandage. Her 72-year-old body ached, her blouse torn from the crash, but her mind burned, fueled by Richard Holt's relentless war, his suspension no break on his venom, and she'd vowed, whispering to Malcolm, "We'll sue him. End this. Legally?" Her voice a blade, his nod a quiet anchor as they'd called Lena, their attorney, to file a lawsuit. Her sharp mind piecing together evidence, emails, Terry's confession, a case to strip Richard bare. Days blurred into court prep, Clara in a crisp suit, her arm still tender, standing before a judge in a packed Atlanta courtroom, cameras rolling as she laid out Richard's crimes, racism, sabotage, forgery, her voice steady. "He's tried to destroy us because of who we are, but we own Horizon Airways, and we'll prove it." Malcolm beside her, his deep voice adding, "He's a fraud, not us." And Lena slammed down the leaked emails, the forged ledgers debunked. A mountain of proof that silenced the room. The judge, a stern woman with gray curls, nodded, her gavel cracking. Richard Holt, executive title revoked, case closed. And Clara's chest swelled, her 72 years of grit paying off. Reporters buzzing, owners win against corrupt. Exec! A victory that felt like air after drowning. Richard's steely eyes glaring from the defendant's table, his tailored suit crisp, but his power gutted. She met Malcolm's gaze, his faint smile a rare thaw, and she thought they'd won, that this legal blow had broken Richard's spine, his empire crumbling under her counterattack. A gala that night at the Hilton, a defiant celebration, her in a navy dress, Malcolm in a suit. Their ownership reaffirmed, the ballroom glittered, chandeliers casting light on board members, staff. all clapping as Clara took the stage, her voice ringing. "This is our airline, built from nothing, and no one takes it." The crowd roaring, glasses clinking, a high she hadn't felt since the press conference. Believing Richard's defeat was final, Malcolm squeezed her hand, his deep voice low. "We did it." And she nodded, her sharp eyes scanning the room, relief washing over her, until a crack split the air, a gunshot ripping through the cheers, glass shattering as a bullet grazed her shoulder, blood blooming on her dress, pain searing as she stumbled, Malcolm catching her, his glasses flying. Chaos erupted, guests screaming, diving under tables, a board member shouting, "Get down!" And Clara's sharp mind snapped to focus, her 72 years of battles kicking in, scanning for the shooter, a shadowy figure bolting through a side door, gone in seconds. Malcolm pressed his tie to her wound, his voice urgent, "Stay with me." And security swarmed, their radios crackling. "Perimeter's clear, he's out," leaving Clara gasping, her shoulder throbbing, the gala a war zone, her victory shot to pieces. Blood soaked her sleeve, her navy dress ruined, and she gritted her teeth, whispering. Richard, knowing his refusal to lose had turned lethal, this assassination attempt his unhinged reply to the courtroom loss. Hours later, police cordoned the scene, her arm bandaged in a hospital room, Malcolm pacing, his suit stained red, and the TV flickered on, Richard's face live, his voice smooth. "They staged it for sympathy. I'm the victim here." His steely eyes glinting, lies spinning as public doubt surged, comments online flipping, "She's faking it, Holt's right." And Clara's stomach sank, her legal win unraveling. The bullets graze a spark reigniting his smear campaign. Detectives stormed in, a gruff woman with a notepad saying, "We've got nothing. No prints. He's clean." And Clara's sharp mind raced, Richard's money buying silence, his desperation a beast unbound, turning her triumph into a target, on her back. Malcolm sat, his hand on hers, his voice low. "He's not stopping." And she nodded, her 72 years of grit flaring, knowing this wasn't just about Horizon anymore. It was life or death. Richard's counterstrike proving he'd rather kill than concede. She winced, pain shooting through her shoulder, her mind churning, piecing together his next move, because this wasn't a random thug. It was hired, precise, his fingerprints invisible but everywhere. And she realized the courtroom hadn't caged him. It had unleashed him, a predator cornered and rabid. Nurses bustled, her bandage tight, and she met Malcolm's gaze whispering, "We need proof. Fast." Her resolve hardening, because she'd survived the jet, the mob, the courts, and now a bullet. But Richard's war was escalating. His refusal, to lose a guillotine blade swinging, and she'd have to outsmart death itself to keep her empire, her life intact. The gala's cheers a distant echo against the blood on her hands. Clara Evans sat in the sterile hospital room, her sharp eyes fixed on the bandage wrapping her grazed shoulder. The sting of the gala's gunshot, a dull ache beneath the gauze as Malcolm stood by the window, his silver hair catching the morning light, his glasses resting on the sill, both of them still reeling from Richard Holt's assassination attempt. His TV lies claiming she'd staged it, twisting her courtroom victory into a public question mark. Her 72-year-old body trembled, her navy dress discarded in a biohazard bin, replaced by a thin gown. But her mind burned, fueled by Richard's refusal to lose, and she'd whispered to Malcolm, "We've got security footage. We'll nail him." Her voice a thread of defiance, his deep rumble agreeing. He's not untouchable, as they'd called Lena, their attorney, to hunt the evidence, her sharp mind set on ending this war. Days later, Lena burst in, her briefcase spilling papers, her voice electric. "Got it. Hotel cameras caught the hitman. Clear tie to Holt's offshore account." And Clara's chest swelled, a lifeline in the chaos, her plan snapping into focus as she said, "Leak it. All of it. Bury him." Her 72 years of grit surging. Malcolm nodding as Lena sent the footage to every news outlet, the grainy video exploding online. A hooded figure wiring funds traced to Richard's shell company, undeniable proof of his lethal hand. The TV flickered, anchors stammering. "Richard Holt linked to shooting, arrest imminent." And Clara exhaled, her shoulder throbbing but her spirit lifting, thinking this was it, the final blow. Richard's empire crumbling under his own weight. Police swarmed his office, cuffs snapping on his wrists live on air, his steely eyes glaring as he barked, "This is a setup." But the board called Clara that night, their voices shaky. "You're back in full control. Holt's out." And she smiled, her sharp eyes glinting, believing redemption was hers. Horizon Airways secure at last. She left the hospital, her arm in a sling, Malcolm beside her in a fresh suit. Their Atlanta penthouse a fortress as they met with loyal execs, her voice firm. "We rebuild now, no more shadows." The room buzzing with relief, her ownership reaffirmed. Richard's suspension and arrest a double lock on his cage. Or so she thought. She slept that night, her first real rest in weeks, dreaming of flights soaring free until a jolt woke her phone blaring with alerts. Horizon Airways grounded, systems hacked, and her heart sank, her sharp mind racing as she booted. Her laptop, screens flashing red, every plane locked down, reservations wiped, a digital catastrophe she couldn't grasp. Malcolm stumbled in, his glasses crooked, his voice tense. "What's happening?" And she scrolled, her stomach twisting as news hit. Clara Evans blamed for airline shutdown. A flood of lies pinning the crash on her. Passengers stranded. Nationwide, their tweets raging. "She's ruined us, fire her." And Clara's victory dissolved, her redemption a mirage. Richard's shadow still clawing from behind bars. She called a T, Jamal's voice frantic. "It's an inside job. Someone's got admin access." And Clara's sharp eyes narrowed, her mind flashing to Vanessa Reed, the flight attendant who'd started this nightmare. Her petty spite now a weapon in Richard's hands, unleashed even from jail. She traced the hack, her 72 years of cunning piecing it together. Jamal confirming, "Vanessa's login, she's in the system." And Clara stormed to the office, her sling tight, confronting a security feed showing Vanessa at a terminal, her blonde ponytail swaying as she typed, her smirk chilling, a pawn radicalized by Richard's hate, grounding Horizon to spite Clara's win. She called Lena, her voice a whip. "Arrest her, I've got proof." And police nabbed Vanessa at her apartment, her laptop seized, the hack undone in hours. Flights resuming as Clara's name cleared, headlines shifting. Employee sabotage, not owners. But the damage lingered, profits tanking, passengers vowing never to fly Horizon again. Clara sat in the boardroom, her sharp eyes tracing the financials, Malcolm beside her, his hand on hers, and she thought they'd survived, that Vanessa's arrest was the end, until a call came, a board member's voice cold. "Richards, allies are moving, they're staging a takeover, your control's slipping." And Clara's stomach dropped, her 72 years of grit tested anew, realizing Richard's arrest hadn't stopped his network, his venom seeping through loyalists, her empire teetering despite her fight. She met Malcolm's gaze, his jaw tight, and whispered, "They're not done," her mind churning, knowing Vanessa's hack was a distraction, a feint for a corporate coup. Richard's refusal to lose striking from the shadows, turning her redemption into a hollow shell. The boardroom hummed, execs whispering, some eyeing her with doubt, others with fear, and she stood, her voice steady. "We hold the line." But the numbers glared, losses mounting, Richard's allies circling, her ownership a crown under siege, and she braced herself, her sharp mind plotting, because this wasn't just a battle for Horizon, it was a war for her soul. And Richard's next move would be his deadliest yet. Clara Evans stood in the Horizon Airways boardroom in Atlanta, her sharp eyes locked on the flickering financial charts, her shoulders stiff beneath the sling from the gala's gunshot, her 72-year-old frame taut as Malcolm sat beside her, his silver hair catching the overhead lights, his glasses clenched in his fist, both of them reeling from Vanessa Reed's hack that had grounded their fleet, a blow that left profits bleeding, and Richard Holt's allies poised for a corporate coup despite his arrest. Her mind burned, the sting of betrayal from Terry's jet sabotage and Vanessa's digital assault fueling her resolve, and she'd whispered to Malcolm, "We end this today, face to face." Her voice a blade, his deep rumble agreeing. No, more running, as they'd tracked Vanessa's movements, her sharp mind piecing together a plan to confront her, to record the truth and shatter Richard's web. The next morning, Clara stormed Hartsfield Jackson's employee lounge, her sling hidden under a coat, Malcolm at her side, her phone live streaming to a trusted reporter as she spotted Vanessa by a vending machine, her blonde ponytail swaying, her smirk sharp as she typed on a tablet, oblivious to the storm closing in. Clara stepped forward, her voice ringing. "You thought you'd bury us, Vanessa, but I've got you now, confess." And Vanessa's head snapped up, her blue eyes narrowing. But Clara hit record, the red dot blinking, saying, "Tell the world how Richard turned you, how he's pulling strings from jail." Her 72 years of grit a wall Vanessa couldn't dodge. Vanessa laughed, bitter and shrill, tossing the tablet aside, her voice cutting. "You think you're untouchable because you're old and black? Holt saw through you, I just finished the job." And Clara's chest swelled, the confession live, streaming to thousands, her sharp eyes glinting as she said, "Keep talking, it's over." The video going viral, comments flooding. "She's done." Holt's toast. A victory she could taste. Richard's network cracking under the weight of Vanessa's own words. She thought she'd won, the boardroom coup dead, her empire secure, until the lounge doors slammed open, Richard bursting in, his tailored suit pristine, his steely eyes wild, free on bail she hadn't anticipated, flanked by 3 thugs in leather jackets, their fists clenched, guns glinting at their waists. Clara's heart slammed, her sharp mind reeling as Richard barked, "Shut it off now," his voice a growl, Vanessa scrambling to his side, whimpering, "I didn't mean it." But he shoved her away, his gaze locking on Clara. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. Sign over Horizon or he's dead." His thug grabbing Malcolm, a blade flashing to his throat, blood beading on his skin. Clara froze, her phone slipping, the live stream cutting as Malcolm grunted, his deep voice steady. "Don't do it." But Richard's laugh was cold. "Too late, you pushed me." And the room shrank, employees scattering, a janitor dropping, his mop, his eyes wide as he bolted. Clara's 72 years of battles surged, her sharp mind racing, knowing Richard's refusal to lose had turned feral. This showdown, his last stand, and she lunged for a wall panel, her fingers hitting. A hidden alarm, a trick she'd installed years ago, its silent pulse summoning security. Richard's thug tightened the knife, Malcolm's neck bleeding, and she shouted, "You're finished, they're coming." Her voice a whip, but Richard smirked. "Not fast enough," signaling another thug to grab her, his meaty hand wrenching her sling, pain exploding as he twisted her arm, her knees buckling. She fought, her sharp eyes spotting a fire extinguisher, swinging it with her good arm, foam spraying into the thug's face, his scream buying seconds as Malcolm elbowed his captor, the blade clattering, but Richard roared, "Enough!" drawing, a gun, his steely eyes blazing. "Sign it or I shoot him myself." Clara's breath hitched, her mind a storm, outsmarting him her only play, and she nodded, feigning defeat. "Give me the papers." Her voice trembling, Richard tossing a contract across the table, his triumph smug as she scrawled a fake signature, her sharp eyes catching the alarm's faint blink, security close. Footsteps thundered, guards bursting in, tasers crackling as they tackled the thugs. Richard's gun skittering, his steely eyes widening. "No!" But Clara's victory was ash, a thug lunging in the chaos, his knife plunging into Malcolm's side, blood pooling as he crumpled, her scream tearing through. "Malcolm!" Guards wrestled Richard down, cuffs snapping, Vanessa sobbing as she was dragged off. But Clara fell to her knees, her 72 years of grit shattering, Malcolm's glasses broken beside him, his breath shallow, her hands pressing his wound, blood soaking her coat. Paramedics rushed in, their voices a blur. "He's alive, move!" And they hauled him to an ambulance, Clara stumbling after, her sharp mind numb, the live stream's truth a Pyrrhic win. Richard's network exposed, but her love bleeding out. The lounge a battlefield of her triumph turned brutal. She clutched Malcolm's hand, his pulse faint, her voice a whisper, "Stay with me." Knowing this wasn't the end, that Richard's fall had cost her everything. Her empire intact, but her heart in pieces. The war's peak a blood-soaked edge she'd barely survived. Clara Evans sat by Malcolm's hospital bed, her sharp eyes tracing the beep of his heart monitor, her 72-year-old hands stained with his blood. The lounge showdown a blur as news blared. Richard Holt convicted, Vanessa jailed. Horizon, hers again. A hollow win with Malcolm's fate uncertain. tubes snaking from his stabbed side. A nurse handed her his phone, unlocked, revealing texts. Sold half to Delta, funds for the fight. A secret deal he'd made, betting on her to reclaim it, his whisper breaking through. "You're stronger." Her chest caving as she realized. Her victory rode on his sacrifice, their empire fractured. The board called, "Delta's suing," and Clara's grim smile flared, her 72 years of grit unbowed, racism forging her anew, her voice vowing, "This isn't over." A warrior ready for war, Malcolm's gamble her new battlefield, the screen fading on her unbroken resolve. Clara and Malcolm Evans' harrowing journey in flight attendant refuses elderly black couple first class, not knowing they own the airline, reveals profound truths about resilience, systemic bias, and the cost of fighting for justice. The first lesson is the unrelenting power of perseverance. Clara's 72 years of grit turned every blow, coffee burns, false accusations, mob attacks, and even a gunshot, into fuel for her defiance, proving that strength isn't just physical, but a choice to stand tall when the world pushes you down. Second, the story exposes how racism isn't just loud slurs but a quiet, pervasive force, from Vanessa's sneers to Richard's corporate sabotage, showing how assumptions can escalate into life-threatening vendettas when unchecked. Third, trust's fragility cuts deep. Terry's betrayal and Malcolm's secret sale remind us that even allies can shift the ground beneath you, forcing reliance on inner resolve over external loyalty. Finally, victory's price is steep. Clara reclaimed Horizon Airways, but Malcolm's sacrifice and her fractured empire highlight that justice often demands more than you're ready to give, a bittersweet truth about battling systemic hate. This tale isn't just about winning. It's about enduring, adapting, and outsmarting a system rigged against you, a blueprint for anyone facing their own Richard Holtz. So what's your takeaway? How would you fight back if the world judged you by your skin, not your worth? Drop a comment with number 1 if you'd stand like Clara, or number 2 if you think the cost was too high. Hit like if this story stirred your soul, subscribe for more tales of unbreakable spirits, and share to spark a conversation about standing up to injustice. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride. Here's to resilience in every storm and strength for your own battles ahead.